Hello everyone and welcome back to Tales from the Vault. Today's episode may not be for the squeamish, as we are going to be delving in to venomous serpents and religious services. So let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome into another episode of Tales from the Vault, where we will be doing tales from local history, childhood memories, true crime, paranormal, and legends. So sit back and let's enjoy this episode. As I stated, today's episode of Tales from the Vault is going to be about venomous serpents and religious services that is practiced here in the South, primarily in Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky, I think it is. So let's get into this. So viewer discretion is advised if you don't like snakes. And these signs shall follow them that believe. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it will not harm them. Mark 16:17. It is a religious practice that finds its roots in Appalachia and goes back over a century. It is a ritual that is practiced in churches, often referred to as renegade and fiercely independent, and most commonly looked upon by the uninitiated as dangerous and a bizarre activity. It is snake handling, and in many Appalachian states, Tennessee among them, it's against the law. According to the Appalachian Regional Commission, the region commonly referred to as Appalachia includes all of West Virginia and parts of 12 other states, such as Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. However, the practice of snake handling has been most commonly observed in more southerly states, specifically West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. The practice of snake handling does not follow a prescribed format. There does appear to be some commonality in such rituals during the religious services. Amidst the sound of music, a worshiper may approach a wooden box specifically designed to house the snakes, then calmly extract a venomous serpent. As others gather around the activity, participation in the worship increases with a more compelling sense of God's presence and direction, and other serpents are taken out and passed amongst the obedient. In some churches, participants also entwine the snakes around their necks and bodies. The Tennessee law passed after 1947 made it unlawful for any person or persons to display, exhibit, handle, or use any venomous or dangerous snakes or reptiles in such a manner as to endanger the lives or health of any person. It soon became apparent that the new law did not have the chilling effect on snake handling that many presumed it would. 5 months after the legislation was passed, 10 members of a church in East Tennessee were convicted of violating the newly enacted statute. They appealed their convictions to the Tennessee Supreme Court. The appellates were members of the Holiness Church located in Hamilton County. This was a case of first impressions for the Tennessee Supreme Court, albeit the court did not at all appear vexed by the facts of the case. Rejecting the appellant's assertion that the statute made an exemption for religious services, or in the alternative, violated the freedom of religion guaranteed by both the federal and state constitutions, court upheld the statute. In so doing, the court issued a final determinative ruling that it is as precise as pragmatic. Rattlesnakes are venomous, and the practice of handling them is dangerous to the life and health of people. It would be almost 30 years before Tennessee courts were once again forced to wrangle with the practice of snake handling. In 1975, the Tennessee Supreme Court granted a ruling in the case of in a state case of Swan versus Packlow to determine whether the state of Tennessee may enjoin religious groups from handling snakes as part of its religious service. It ultimately ruled it could. In the instant case, the circuit court at Cocke County, Newport, permanently enjoined the defendant, pastor of the Holiness Church of God in Jesus' name of Newport, and one of its elders from handling, displaying, or exhibiting dangerous or venomous snakes. The court dedicated its action primarily upon a finding that the handling of dangerous and venomous snakes was in violation of the Tennessee Code and that the practice was done in the presence of children and other people attending church services. The Court of Appeals, in a split decision, found the injunction to be overboard, subsequently modifying it to read that the respondents were permanently enjoined from handling, displaying, or exhibiting dangerous and venomous snakes in such a manner as will endanger the lives and health of persons who do not consent to the exposure to such danger. Under this record, showing as it does the handling of venomous snakes in a crowded church sanctuary with virtually no safeguards, with children roaming about unattended, with the handlers so enraptured and entranced that they are in a virtual state of hysteria and acting under the compulsion of atonement, we would be derelict in our duty if we did not hold the respondents and their confederates having combined and conspired to commit a public nuisance and plan to continue to do so. The origins of the snake handling. Although historians don't completely agree on the origins of snake handling, the practice most commonly tied to holiness movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. According to historians Ralph W. Hood Jr., W. Paul Williamson, and Thomas G. Burton, and a Tennessean by the name of George Went Hensley was responsible for spreading snake handling practices in the South in the early 20th century. Hensley is credited with founding the Holiness Church of God in 1909 at Sale Creek in Grasshopper Valley, Tennessee, approximately 35 miles northeast of Chattanooga. Hensley, it is surmised, was motivated by a dramatic experience that occurred atop White Oak Mountain near Ooltewah, Tennessee, on the eastern rim of the valley, during which he confronted and seized a rattlesnake. Unbitten and armed with the snake, Hensley returned to the valley, entered Grasshopper Church of God, and admonished members of the congregation to follow his example and take up or be doomed to eternal hell. Although illiterate, Hensley nevertheless became a licensed minister of the Church of God in Cleveland, Tennessee in 1915. He, along with fellow church members, treated as an imperative passage in the book of Mark, chapter 16, verse 17 and 18, which reads, "And these signs shall follow them that believe in my name. Shall they cast out devils? They shall speak with new tongues. They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." The practice continues despite the fact that George Henry lost his life due to a snake bite in 1955. According to witnesses during a Sunday worship service held in the town of Alta, Florida, Hensley handled a diamondback rattlesnake for approximately 15 minutes before it bit him. The Calhoun County Sheriff attempted to convince Hensley to receive medical attention to no avail. The sheriff ultimately ruled Hensley's passing of his own hands. Despite laws that ban the practice and prosecutors willing to pursue charges against offenders, the practice continues. For example, recently the grand jury of Campbell County, Tennessee, returned a no true bill of indictments against Andrew Hamlin, pastor of the Tabernacle Church of God, La Follette, Tennessee, in response to charges brought against him when it was learned that he was handling venomous snakes as part of his religious services held in his church. Further, the ceremonies continue to fascinate the uninitiated, as evidenced by the fact that the National Geographic devoted a reality show to the ritual called Snake Salvation. Pastor Hamlin is one of the pastors that was followed by prosecutors and TV crews alike. Hensley's ministry was influential in prompting various churches to include the snake handling practice in their services. He had resigned from the Church of God, citing trouble in the home. His resignation marked the zenith of the practice of snake handling in the denomination, with the Church of God disavowing the practice of snake handling during the 1920s. In the 1930s, he traveled the Southeast, resuming his ministry and promoting the practice. If believers truly had the Spirit of God in them, Hensley argued, they should be able to handle rattlesnakes and any number of other venomous serpents. Snake handling as a test or demonstration of faith, became popular wherever Hensley traveled and preached in the small towns of Tennessee, Kentucky, the Carolinas, Virginia, Ohio, and Indiana. Sister churches later sprang up throughout the Appalachian. Most religious snake handlers are still found in the Appalachian Mountains and other parts of the southeastern United States. It was reported Hensley had been bitten nearly 400 times prior to his fatal bite. Handling snakes can have some hazards to the snakes. 1. Snakes can be damaged if picked up by the tail or gripped behind the head. 2. Snakes that are kept in poor conditions or caught shortly before a service may have diminished ability to strike and injure. 3. The haphazard handling of snakes can break the neck or spine of the snake. 4. A snake taken out of its wild habitat can refuse to eat and pass away. 5. Numerous snakes confined together can spread parasites, pathogens, and diseases. Tennessee snake handling churches. It's 1 p.m. and Sunday service at the Tabernacle Church of God are about to begin. The band, 2 electric guitars, bass, drums, tambourine, organ, has been playing softly for several minutes. But now, as Andrew Hamlin strides in, they crank it up to a fever pitch, the rockabilly beat driving the faithful into a celebratory mood. That's when the rattlesnakes appear. They're unlocked from plexiglass carrying cases near the pulpit, and Hamlin grabs them seemingly without fear. He jigs to the music, moving his hands and feet in time, flinging around the venomous snakes in his hands, though he always keeps an eye on them. Venomous snakes in churches are always notable, but this afternoon they're especially notable. 53 snakes, including rattlers, copperheads, and cottonmouths, were seized from the locked snake room at the church on November the 7th by Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency officials, backed by deputies from Knox and Campbell counties. The next evening, Hamlin thumbed his nose at the law and held regular Friday night services with donated snakes. Bice attended Sunday services 2 days later. I was raised in a Free Will Baptist church, and I've been handling snakes since I was 18, Hamlin said. I seen it on television when I was 16 years old, and that is how I first found out about it. Finally, one day God moved on me and allowed me to do it. Hamlin's windowless church lies in a rutted gravel road not far from a few working-class houses and mobile homes in La Follette, a mountain community in the state north of Knoxville. The young pastor has been married since he was 18. He's now the father of 5 children. His wife Elizabeth rushed around the church barefoot, corralling the kids, running inside and outside the church. Other women walk around barefoot too. Even though the temperature hovers near 60 degrees, there are 9 rows of worn pews. The wall behind Hamlin is painted with a scene of Noah's Ark floating solitary atop the great flood, God's light shining down upon it. Hamlin says he has never been scared of handling snakes, though he admits to have been bitten once while cleaning cages. He was featured on the National Geographic Channel show Snake Salvation, but his legal troubles have brought him far more attention. I have been swamped with messages on my phone from people who support the way I want to worship, he says. What are they going to do? Make praying against the law? They call me a snake handler, but there's been more people taking up serpents in these mountains for years. It's been going on a longer time than any Tennessee law has. Before Hamlin begins the service, congregants continually tug at him, asking for him to pray for sick family members or bless them. He's not unlike a rock star here. Once the service is in full swing, the flock claps and waves their hands in the air. Hamlin and other men pass the rattlesnakes around, working up a sweat as they dance and sing. Some people began speaking in tongues. They took the 10 Commandments off the walls, Hamlin began, addressing the congregation when the music dies down. But they messed with the wrong Christians when they separated church and state. But they're taken away from us. Do you believe in freedom of religion? The flock cheers. All them godless people out there. We snake handlers. We're a coming out of the woodwork. No man has a right to tell us how to worship our God. The serpent is symbolic of our adversary. The service is a grueling 2.5-hour long service. At one point, a woman lights a butane torch and begins running her hand and fingers through the flame to demonstrate that the devil's fire can't hurt her. When she's done, an elderly woman shuffles over and does the same. The music only lets up when the worshippers gather around someone who has had an affliction. Placing their hands on the person's head and closing their eyes deep in prayer, one of the afflicted is Hamlin's wife, who says she's been bedeviled with stress since the circus began to swirl around her husband. She cries as everyone gathers around in support. Hamlin simply looks on, mic in hand, jigging. 5 days later, Hamlin is in the Campbell County Courthouse in Jacksboro, the county seat. 3 miles down the road from La Follette, he preaches with his Bible in his hand outside before pleading not guilty to the possession charges, which could be stacked for every snake seized, totaling more than 50 charges of misdemeanor possession of Class 1 wildlife. Each charge can carry a $2,500 fine and up to a year in jail. Dozens are outside the courthouse where he tells a gaggle of reporters, "This ain't no longer a fight for snake handling. This is a fight for freedom of religion." Tennessee outlawed snake handling in 1947 after 5 people passed from bites within 2 years. All of them from the same Congregational church. Nevertheless, a grand jury declined to indict Hamlin, but the state won't be returning the snakes. After Hamlin's snakes were seized, wildlife officials stated the snakes suffered from several parasites and pathogens that had already taken the lives of 39 copperheads and rattlesnakes. Wildlife officials later euthanized the remaining 14 snakes after the health of the snakes continued to decline. They had taken the snakes with the intentions of placing the copperheads at the Kentucky Reptile Zoo. The snakes had been taken to the Knoxville Zoo. The 53 snakes were frozen. They were then donated to the East Tennessee State University's Natural History Museum in Gray, Tennessee. They were then thawed out, and their bones were used for scientific study. Things can be learned from snakes that have been bred or lived in captivity that cannot be learned from those in the wild. For example, an animal that has lived in captivity will live longer than one in the wild, and its bones can show such things as arthritis or old age. These snakes are valuable to the museum because venomous snakes are harder to come by, and these snakes are also physically intact, said the curator. Even the surviving 14 snakes that looked healthy on the outside had parasites and were stricken with diseases that could not be treated. None of the snakes were suitable for the release to the wild or for keeping at the zoo. The problem was the possibility of infecting other animals with their diseases. It was decided to keep the remains preserved in the hopes that some beneficial use could be found. So now at least some good can come out of all of this. This is the story of snake handling in the South. Like I said, this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but this is the way it is around here. I have never witnessed or been, I don't know of any place that practices snake handling. I myself, I like snakes. I have a respect for snakes because snakes serve a purpose. I know a lot of people hate snakes. They think the only good one is the one that's not alive. I understand that. But we have gotten so many benefits from snakes. You know, there's been high blood pressure medicines. We have gotten syringes, just different things like that has been developed because of snakes. And I have, like I said, I have a healthy respect for a snake. I think a snake is beautiful if it's out in the wild. I don't want to be, I don't want to touch one. I don't want it close to me, but I don't go seeking snakes to exterminate them. But that's just me. That might not be you. I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm just telling you how I feel about those snakes. They have always fascinated me. So I hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think about this. It's not, like I said, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So until the next time, don't forget to like, to subscribe, to hit that notification button, and to share this video. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye.